Hello. Today I'm going to show you how I get from this to this. Before we start, you can download the brushes with the link in the description, but alternatively, you can use these Procreate default brushes. Now that you're ready, let's start. For the background, let's make it a skin color, any skin color you want. So roughly, I sketched out the shape of the eye here using the sketch brush. I didn't refine the sketch here too much because this is more of a guideline and later on we're gonna hide this layer anyway. After having the sketch done, I lowered the opacity of the sketch and added a layer on top. I used the soft brush in a dark brown color to go over the eye line. Then I added new layers below the sketch layer to block out the colors for each parts of the eye, including the sclera, let's just call it eye white, iris, and pupil. Now I alpha lock the eye white layer and pick a slightly darker color and more saturated version of the eye white. I then lightly brush it on the top and around the edges of the eye like so. As we work on this, you can lower the opacity of the sketch layer so you can see what you're doing better. I then pick a dark red color to color the front and the end of the eye, like this. I also blend it a little bit to the bottom and top of the eye as well, very lightly. Now we move on to the iris layer and alpha lock it. I pick a darker, more saturated shade of the iris and slide the hue bar a little to the right. I then use the soft brush again to paint the top part and around the iris. You can pick a much darker shade to go over the top part of the iris to add more depth. Now let's add a new layer on top of the iris to draw our pupil by using the darkest shade that we just used earlier. This is optional, but you can do this if you want. So I unlocked the iris layer and used Gaussian blur to blur it out at around 4% just so the eye looks softer. I didn't do a good job at creating that shape of the iris here, so I gotta use Lofi to reshape it a little. Below all these layers, let's create a skin layer where you can shade the parts around the eyes. I pick a darker and more saturated shade of the skin and start brushing around the edges of the eye like this. I also added some shadow in the area that's under the brow and next to the nose. I don't know what's it called, sorry. I then used the base skin color to paint over the eyelid and under the eye like this. Make sure you only brush it lightly so it doesn't look too harsh. I picked the dark red color in the corner of the eye white to create the line for the eyelid like so. Use the smudge tool to brush at the ends of the line we just created. I used the same color to line under the eye a little bit to add more depth, and a little under the agosal just to make it cuter. Then I just brushed super lightly around these areas of the eye just so the color transition looks more smooth. I hope that makes sense. Now select the lash layer and use a slightly darker shade of the eyeline. Let's draw some lashes with the lash brush or the technical pen if you didn't download mine. Draw the lashes following these directions. For the bottom lashes, it can just be random like this here, and I don't want to add too much to avoid it looking unnatural, but you can go crazy if you want. After that, I used Gaussian blur and set it at 2% just so the lashes look softer and not too harsh comparing to the rest of the eye. Let's go back to the skin layer. Here I used the base skin color again to paint over the waterline, very lightly like this. Now is the fun part. Let's add a new layer on top of everything and select the flat brush. Pick pure white and put a dot in the pupil like this. I added some highlights in the front, top, and bottom of the eye. Play with the pressure of your pen to create some dynamic highlights and have fun. If you want the eye to shine more, you can create a layer on top of the iris and set the layer mode to add. Let's pick the color of the iris and use the soft brush to paint in this area of the iris like this. We can consider it done here. What you're seeing after this is just me being extra. So if you think the color overall is too dull for your liking, you can create a layer on top of everything and set the layer mode to overlay. Pick a darker shade of the skin and make it more saturated. Then gently brush around the end edges of the eye like so, and a little in the front. Here's a quick comparison. Having a separate layer for the iris like this make it so much easier to change the color of the eye without affecting other parts of the eye. What I'm doing here is just locking the iris layer again and add a darker shade on the top and around the edges of the iris for more depth. I'm fixing the iris again and adjusting the pupil accordingly. And that's it. Let me know if you found this tutorial helpful. And if you try it out, please post and tag me on Instagram so I can check it out. Thank you for watching. Bye!